and welcome into the Daily Wolves podcast. I'm your host, Evan. I'm here with my co hosts, Matt, Andrew. We got a special man in the building, Mr. Michael Grady. Grady himself, the next Mike Breen. Some people would say, Grady, when you yell cash, that's what I hear. Like the next Mike Breen. That's the next bang, man. Like when he goes away, you're going to be in that limelight. You're on ESPN. We love you in Minnesota, brother. It's awesome. How you doing today, Grady? It's good to have you on.
Oh, good to be on with you, and I appreciate the kind words. It's nice to have a week off. Wolves took care of business so that we can all relax a little bit and let the momentum build for what should be an exciting first round series with the Lakers.
Yes, sir. It's a fun season. I'm sure you're a busy guy. It's like you said, having a week off's awesome. Sorry to get you here right now during your off week, man. But yeah, we're excited to have you on. Talk Wolves basketball, talk the season, everything like that. I guess first, because I've gotten a lot of questions. We get direct messages about it when people knew you were coming on. They want to know, what's the life like for you? What's a day routine for you on like a game day? How do you get ready, Grady, for to call the game at night?
Yeah, well, shout out the Timberwolves and their social media team. They did a day in the life thing recently. I mean, it was a small piece, but it pretty much sums up, my day. The night before, I'm putting a bunch of work together for my board, so I know a little bit about each of the players. That continues into the next morning after the updated stats come through. If there's a home shoot around, I'll pop over, check out the home shoot around, get a run in, get a nap in, which is important, and then I make my way over to the arena, hear from both coaches, get their perspectives on the game, and then it's time to pop into the arena, and then it's showtime. But yeah, there's a lot of prep in terms of again preparing for each and every game, and I feel like I get paid for the prep, and then the games I do for free. So that's how that works.
Yeah, 100%, man. I guess then going into everything, obviously we've all talked about it. You're familiar with the Grady, Mr. Karl Anthony Towns, one of the beloved guys in the state of Minnesota. He gets traded in the beginning of the year before the season starts, 2 days before training camp. In fact, what did you think of the Karl Anthony Towns trade? Did it shock you when it went down? Like, how did you find out about it, Grady?
I mean, there were rumors about it for quite some time. So the trade itself didn't surprise me. The timing of it surprised me a little bit, although that may be even a little bit of an exaggeration because in New York, it was very clear that they were going to be shorthanded as far as their bigs were concerned. And so they were in a little bit of a desperation mode. And
Mhm.
so to revisit a Karl Anthony Towns trade and then to bring in or add a Dante DiVincenzo to the mix, changed the game. So I think the emotion of the deal with given what Karl Anthony Towns is meant to not just the franchise but the community kind of
Mhm.
overshadowed the fact that you have to look at this deal from a marathon point of view as opposed to a sprint. There were going to be inevitable bumps in the road because the learning curve for Julius Randle and this offense is much different than the learning curve for Karl Anthony Towns in New York. His task, not to belittle it, was much simpler than what Julius Randle had to deal with this group and figuring out how he fits in with this Timberwolves team offensively and defensively. On the offensive end, okay, there were games where he's just going out and scoring and just looking to put the ball in the hoop. And then there's over time, it was we need you to be more of a facilitator, and then him learning how to do that or getting into his bag in that regard was big for this team during the stretch right before he got hurt, and then continued once he returned. And so yeah, I think over the long haul, this team has gotten stronger, but initially, I certainly understand the shock. Again, connection with the guy for as long as he's been here, and in terms of how the whole thing plays out, the Timberwolves, they did not trade Karl Anthony Towns because they did not believe he was a top tier regular season performer. The
Facts.
question was at that price tag, can he deliver for you in the postseason? And that's a
Mhm.
legitimate question, even if you're a diehard Karl Anthony Towns fan. So, from the Knicks' perspective, they're hoping that he is going to be a big time performer in the playoffs as they get ready for their series with the Pistons. And then from the Timberwolves' perspective, they just hope that depth wins the day. Again, not just with Julius Randle and what he brings, but Dante DiVincenzo coming off the bench. I'm excited to see how it looks.
It's interesting you bring up Randall. After practice today, he said almost the exact same thing. When he got here, he was
Mm,
so used to scoring 30 points a game that he didn't really know or remember how to play a different way than that. And over
Hmm.
the course of the season, he said he's found different ways to affect a basketball game, which is like the
mhm,
biggest development in his career. And I think that's kind of the thing that's played out the most throughout the season is just Julius Randle is developing. I mean, in his 30s, for us in our 30s, we know that's hard enough just personally, but to change how you play basketball at that level. I mean, what has your thoughts been on Randall in particular, just his ability to adapt?
I give him a ton of credit. This is not an easy situation to step into. I think from a Timberwolves side of things, we look at it as we let Carl Anthony Towns go and we're bringing in this new guy and what's he going to bring
mhm,
to the table, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But from Randall's point of view, he was cast aside in New York. Everything
Yeah.
that he gave to the Knicks, blood, sweat, and tears, all of that, they basically discarded him. And so from that perspective,
mhm,
there's an emotional element that you have to get over in a short amount of time. It wasn't like
Mhm.
he had the a whole off season to wrap his mind around it and then get ready to play Timberwolves basketball. It was right at the start of training camp, and then boom, here's your new teammates. Your family, your kids, they've all got to get adjusted in this new place, and you have to
mhm,
figure out your new teammates, playing with Anthony Edwards, playing with Rudy Gobert, and developing a chemistry there, which had hit its bumps earlier in the season, of course. And so I give him a lot of credit because if the team had completely imploded, I don't know who else would get a finger pointed at them faster than
Yep.
Julius Randle.
mhm.
So for Julius to say,
Yeah.
what can I do to help this team? And to take it upon himself while working with the coaching staff to figure out a way to be most impactful on this team. I don't think he gets enough praise for what he has had to go through and had to adjust to with this group.
There's a Nikhil quote that I got from him back in like December where he said, "It's time to stop talking about doing the right thing and time to start surrendering for a greater purpose."
Mhm,
And I mean, that's what all of these guys have done at this point. I mean, the other guy that in the trade, Dante, he was playing 48 minutes a game for Tibbs in the playoffs last year. Starts off this year coming off the bench, starter, then back to the bench, injured. I mean, what can you say about Dante and just his ability to adapt as well?
Dante just, this is true of all the guys, but Dante just really wants to win. He's a fierce competitor, obviously a lights out shooter. He takes gambles on the defensive end, but he's not not a liability on the defensive
yeah,
side of the ball. And I really appreciate his competitive spirit. He's the type of guy, and you need guys this on your roster where he could miss 10 shots in a row and he's super confident in that 11th attempt. And you just need a guy who can just have a short-term memory and be unconscious,
mhm,
especially in these big moments, in these big games, and not being afraid to take, a big shot. And Jim and I talked about it on the broadcast from day one in training camp. When Dante wasn't quite practicing just yet, he was pulling guys to the side to pick their brain, talking to Mike Conley. This in this scenario, what do we do here? In this scenario, what do we do here? Talking with Anthony Edwards about where he likes the ball, talking with Nas Reed. And I really liked his involvement because again, he's going through all those things that Julius is going through. He's leaving
Hmm.
his Nova brothers and then coming over here to Minnesota. And so instead of pouting, griping, he was making the most of the situation. And I'm sure that he wanted to start. If he was going to leave New York, it was to be in a situation where he could start. But to concede to the process and do whatever the coaching staff asked of him, I really appreciate what he brings to the table, and he is 100% going to be an X factor in this series with the LA Lakers.
Yeah, that's
mm,
kind of been a point that we've talked about on our podcast a lot is Dante is just one of those players that wins you championships. He wins you big games. He's one of those diamonds in the rough. And
mhm,
we've kind of talked about the Julius adaptation, getting Dante involved in the offense. What was your kind of view on the season? Because we have the shaky start, incorporating Julius, incorporating Dante. you kind of coast towards the middle, and towards the end, we start to put things together. I'm sure you saw it all over social media at the beginning of the season. A lot of fans were kind of questioning, I should say, what the direction of the team was, just the play and whatnot. But I think towards the end of the season, I think we can track this back to it was a successful season. And I'm just kind of curious what your outlook on the regular season was.
Yeah, it was an emotional roller coaster for sure, and that's putting it lightly. One, because of the outside noise,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just last season was easy street. You didn't have back-to-back losses for crying out loud. I mean, guys were just figuring out a way, and there is a process, right? The first year with Rudy Gobert was not pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following year, everybody understood the assignment and they just steamrolled.
Mhm.
So we should give the same grace, which wasn't always the case, again, talking about outside noise, the
Mm-hmm.
same grace to incorporating Julius Randle into this offense and Dante DiVincenzo into the mix in a ridiculously tough Western Conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one is going to wait for you to figure it out. No one is going to wait for you
Mhm.
to figure out an identity. When you play Houston, Houston is going to try to take your head off. You play OKC, they're going to try to take your head off. Well, we're still getting our chemistry right. Teams don't care. And so to have that trade happen when it took place, and the guys are figuring out each other and how to play with each other early in the season, and everybody is coming at your throat because let's not forget this was a Western Conference Finals team last
Mm-hmm.
season with one of the brightest young stars in the NBA who also loves to talk a little trash. So
Mm-hmm.
when the Timberwolves come to town and they show up on the schedule, that's something that you circle. And so there were so many teams that just tried to break Minnesota's will, and there's just no nights off because it is a marquee event when it's time to face the Minnesota Timberwolves. So for me, again, I'm not looking at this from a sprinter's perspective. I'm looking at it from a marathon. The
Mm-hmm.
longer this team stays together in building this chemistry, what can this look like? Now, in the short term, though, they are playing their best. They are looking like they're playing their best basketball right now. Hiccup against the Milwaukee Bucks in that fourth quarter, notwithstanding, they put together a really good stretch, taking care of business the way that they are supposed to, and I believe they're going to be ready for the Lakers. The times where they have not looked best this season is when
Mm-hmm.
they've looked like individuals on the basketball court.
Mm-hmm.
When the going
100%.
gets tough, guys are trying to take matters into their own hands. When they trust each other, trust the pass, and guys aren't forcing it and taking it upon themselves to pull the team out of a hole, that's when they're at their best. And so they're still a stout defensive team. They're top 10 in offensive rating in the NBA. There's no reason that they shouldn't give the Lakers everything that they can handle in this first round series.
Are you
And
worried about the clutch kind of issues, Grady, going into it? Because I think that's been a lot of the issues this year, man, is it gets down there. Doesn't matter if they're against a good team, doesn't matter if they're against a bad team. They struggle sometimes in the clutch. The playoffs, we know it's going to come down to the last few minutes. The Timberwolves of a few years back against the Memphis Grizzlies in that series when they had D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, all those guys. That's kind of where they struggled in the series. They were up against Memphis in every game, and then they just couldn't close it out, and Memphis would come back. Are you worried about that at all, or should Wolves fans feel worried about that?
I think it's something to keep an eye on for sure. I think that is a fair
Mhm.
worry, might be too strong, but I think it's something to be cognizant of.
Mm.
Jim and I, we pointed out three different things that led to the Timberwolves being where they are in the standings this season. One is sometimes they would play down to their opponent, and that happened far too
Mhm.
many times. Two Portland games, a recent New Orleans game, the game where Indiana didn't play anybody at Target Center. There's just too many times where the Timberwolves played down to their competition and gave away games. The other is they weren't as dominant at home this regular season as they were a season ago when they had 30 wins on their home court. And
Mhm.
so not having that home dominance impacted. And then the third is just what you brought up, and performance in the clutch. And so that, again, that could be a deal breaker in terms
Yep.
of can you go on a long run in the postseason? And especially with this first round series against the Lakers, where you have LeBron James, where I think everybody feels comfortable with him in the clutch,
Hmm.
and they have Luka Doncic. And we know what Luka has done in the clutch against Minnesota in recent memory. So
Hmm.
and then all the talk about a
Yeah.
Lakers whistle and all those kinds of things. So, yeah, the key, and this is something that I took from a conversation I had with Mark Daigneault, the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They
Hmm.
haven't had many clutch games this season.
Mm.
They probably had the
Yeah.
fewest in the NBA this season. They had the widest point spread in NBA history, winning games by an average of nearly 13 points per game,
Crazy.
which is wild. And I asked him about whether or not he's worried about his guys in the clutch. If you're blowing everybody out and then all of a sudden you're in a nip and tuck tight ball game late, do you worry about your team's performance having not had the calluses and the experiences over the course of the season of playing in those nail biter moments?
Hmm.
And he said, no. We firmly believe in what we preach is that the way that you play in the first quarter is the way that you should be playing in the fourth quarter. The way that you play in the second quarter and execute, no matter who is out there on the basketball court, is how you perform when the game is on the line. And that's his approach. We'll see whether or not they do perform well in the clutch, because there will inevitably be tight ball games with Oklahoma City. But their calling card all season long has been lockdown defense, and then you have a playmaker and an elite scorer in Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and they're going to
Hmm.
ride that till the wheels fall off. First
Hmm.
quarter, second quarter, third and fourth. And so, from a Timberwolves perspective, can they jump out, play the right way, and can they not? Can they keep from deviating from that over the course of a 48-minute game? And I'll be really curious to see how that plays out.
Hmm.
Going to the Lakers game,
Yeah.
what is your thoughts on that matchup? The guys today at practice said all the right things. You got to play everyone. Excited for the challenge. Chris Finch mentioned Joe Ingles is playing Luka Doncic on the scout team. So fun little nugget for everyone that want to imagine Joe Ingles as wearing a 77 jersey. But what are your thoughts? Like, how do you feel they're going to match up just at a baseline level with the Lakers?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the Wolves certainly have an advantage from a depth standpoint. You have you have the reigning six man of the year coming off the bench, and
Hmm.
Dante DiVincenzo, who can get you 15 in a heartbeat and be lights out from downtown. And of course, you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is just a menace every time he steps out there on the basketball court. And so I think the hungrier, more aggressive, more desperate team is going to win out. This is not a series where being cute is going to win the day. So if the Timberwolves are the more aggressive team, while also keeping a close eye on how games are being officiated, those first few minutes of each and every one of these playoff games is going to be a indicator of
Hmm.
how you should approach the rest of the way. So if they're calling ticky-tack fouls early, you have to make a mental adjustment in how you're defending, because you can't let LeBron, Luka, and company live at the free throw line. If they're letting things go, which we saw at times in the postseason last year, especially against Denver, that's advantage Minnesota, and then it's literally go balls to the wall and give them hell.
Hmm.
So the officials are going to play a role in this, but it's up to the Timberwolves to understand that every game takes on its own personality, and you have to, figure out how these games are being officiated and then act accordingly. But Luka is an interesting one, because I think he looks at the Timberwolves, and to steal a quote from Nas Reed, I think he sees food.
Hmm. Mm.
I think he looks at
Yeah.
whoever's guarding him. If
Yeah.
it's a switch and it's Gobert, if he's matched up against Jaden McDaniels, if he's matched up against Ant, I think he looks at everybody on this Timberwolves squad as food. And what that means is that it's up to the Timberwolves to be indigestion. They have to be so disruptive and so physical with Luka Doncic to change that opinion in his mind that he can get whatever he wants out there on the basketball court. And that's what's great about sports. That's what's great about a 7-game
Mhm.
playoff series, is to completely change the mind, change the narrative. And so Luka's going to come in thinking that he owns Minnesota, and it's up to the Wolves to completely change that narrative.
Mm,
I see stuff on social media about what Ant averaged against the Lakers during the regular season.
mhm,
That means nothing when
Yeah.
we're talking about playoff basketball. So I'm excited to see Ant lock in against another guy that he doesn't talk about as glowingly as he does at Kevin Durant, but he has an immense amount of respect for in LeBron James. And what I love about Ant is he doesn't let his reverence get in the way of his competitive fire. He is. I think Michael Jordan told the story about Vernon Maxwell, and Vernon was like trying to take Mike's head off and was doing all kind of crazy things on the court. And then after the game, he went in the Bulls locker room to ask for an autograph for his son. And Mike was like, "It's the same guy who just was trying to kill me on the basketball court." And that's how Ant is. Ant wants to literally go at your throat. And then when the game is over, that's my guy. I look up to him. He's an amazing player. He's one of the best all time, and he gives an immense amount of respect. And so I love that about Ant. I can't wait to see how he battles in this series. And I mentioned Dante being an X factor. I think Jaden's going to be huge. I think Rudy
mhm,
Gobert has got to be a monster against this Lakers lineup without a dominant big. And this, again, no disrespect to Jackson Hayes. He's just not
mm,
a. He's
Yeah.
just someone who should not give Rudy a lot of issues. But this is a monster Julius Randle series as well.
mm,
Um, that balance that you spoke of earlier, that he talked about at practice today, of knowing when to attack, knowing when to set up his teammates, um, take prioritizing taking care of the ball and making wise decisions with the rock. He is going to be really instrumental in this series. And I'll also, in addition to Julius, be curious to see how they utilize Mike Conley and
Yeah.
what is the best defensive matchup and usage for him, whether it's in the starting lineup or coming off the bench. I'm really curious to see how Conley is used. From the Lakers side of things, I just think Austin
mm,
Reeves is a big X factor. I just feel like
mhm,
I think a lot of people focus on LeBron and Luca, and they lose sight of the fact that Austin is going out there and playing like he's like this isn't Batman, Robin, and Alfred. No, he's like, no, I got a cape too. And I,
Yeah.
I respect the fact that he's going out there and battling each and every night. So the Timberwolves are going to have to find a way to slow Reeves down because he's not only can score, but he's also one of those guys who draws fouls quite a bit too and can live at the free throw line.
mhm.
The
One of the
Mike
leaders.
matchup. The Mike matchup is really interesting to me because his importance level on this team for ball movement, leadership, having the
Mm,
wheels on the bus to actually go around and not like spin off into an alleyway is so high. But this series is really going to be difficult for him to stay on the court. I mean, this Lakers team doesn't have a center, but they're a big team. Just what do you think his role is going to be at when it's all said and done in this series?
mhm,
They're going to have to find the advantages for Mike Conley out there. Even at his age, um, Mike can impact pace and tempo
Hmm.
in a slow half court set where Luca could back you down or Reeves could back you down, and that's really it because it's Rui, LeBron, and Jackson Hayes after that in the starting
mhm,
Yep.
lineup. So no matter which guy it is, they're going to try to use a physical advantage on you. And so you have to figure out what Mike's advantages are when he's out there, and that's get out and running and trying to facilitate the offense and get buckets before that half court defense is set for the Lakers. And so incorporating pace is going to be extremely important when Mike is on the floor. And the Timberwolves aren't considered a high pace team at all. Like they're 24th at my last check. So that they're going to have to figure out ways for him to be effective out there and then be quick on the trigger if the Lakers are having too many advantages with getting easy looks inside. But to your point, Mike is such a calming presence on the floor. He's such a great communicator on the floor. And if you need to get something run settled with the offense, he's the perfect guy to do it. So this when you say this isn't a Conley series, that's that's BS. If you're going to be successful and make your way through the West and hopefully to the NBA Finals, there is no such thing as a non-Mike
Yep.
series. He's going to have his fingerprints in one way or another on every game. Now, whether that's 15 minutes or
Hmm.
25 minutes, he's still going to have his impact on the game. Because on top of the facilitating, he's still a lights out shooter, and he has been an impressive shooter since the All Star break.
Grady, the
He's
last before we get into sorry, Andrew, before we get to
Yep.
I just gotta there's fans that have been asking questions. I just want to get a fan question there for everyone real quick and it kind of tying in Andrew obviously and into the closing there. This fan asks how is it to cover Kevin Durant when you were with Brooklyn? Well, what's it like being around KD? And then obviously Grady, he's linked to Minnesota. You know, how fans are probably just wondering who is Kevin and what's it like being up close to him?
Uh, Being around Kevin was one of the highlights of my career, and it was a
Mhm.
combination of Kevin and Kyrie. Up to that point, my day-to-day interactions were when I was in Indiana, it was with Paul George and watching his rise. Paul George rookie year was my first year with the Pacers as a PA announcer, and
Mhm.
then when he left for OKC, I left for Brooklyn. So I watched his entire time as a guy coming off the bench. And then, he's dunking on Birdman in a playoff game against the Miami Heat. And he became the guy. And so it was great to watch that. My first 2 years in Brooklyn, I was around D'Angelo Russell, and D'Angelo had his one and only All-Star season in my second year there in Brooklyn. And the team went from a 20-something win team to a playoff team. They were an 8 seed and they were knocked out by
Mhm.
Philadelphia. But it was fascinating watching all the young guys there. Again, D'Lo as an All-Star, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, Joe Harris. There were so much. Spencer Dinwiddie was nobody really knew his name until he
Hmm.
blossomed in Brooklyn. And so the job that Kenny Atkinson did to elevate with player development these young guys I thought was impressive. And then all of a sudden, Kevin Durant comes
Mm.
and Kyrie Irving comes. And we're talking
Killer.
about basketball excellence. And you can apply these
Mhm.
things that they are doing as basketball players to anything that we do in our day-to-day life. The way that Kevin approaches practice, the way that he approaches game days, the way that the meticulous way that he goes about um, uh, the way that he, I don't know, the detail.
Mhm.
Everything is full speed. You
Yeah.
hear that a lot when folks talk about Kevin Durant. He doesn't go into practice going 75%. It's at full speed so that when the game happens,
Mm.
it's muscle memory. And it almost looks like when he's at his best that he's just out there by himself,
Hmm.
getting to his
Yeah.
spots, and you can't force him into an uncomfortable shot. So for me, watching the way that he went about his business was one of the highlights of my career. And same thing with Kyrie Irving, who was just a magician out there on the
Mm.
basketball court. And so you
Insane.
think the games are fascinating, the practices and the
Yeah.
work that goes into being special when the lights go on was unreal and something that
Mm.
I'll never forget. And it's no wonder that he and Anthony Edwards hit it off. It's no wonder that one, Ant was an admirer of Kevin Durant, but then two, once they were together in Paris and winning gold together, it was really no surprise that they became as close as they were. So because one thing that we know about Ant is that he is a gym rat.
Mm.
Hmm.
And Kevin
Yes.
Durant is a gym rat. Those two guys, they go from the gym and then they play video games, and then they're back in
Yep.
the gym and then they play video games. So they're two peas in a pod. So Ant, which is again a reason to be excited from a Wolves fan perspective, is cut from that same cloth. The The scouting report on Anthony Edwards over the course of his career was that he's a capable shooter, but he is a downhill scorer who will dunk on you and your mom. And he's a spectacular high flying player. To go from that to leading the NBA in 3-point field goals made this season with 320 is a testament to the work that he puts in the gym. And I'll use the word meticulous again, the meticulous approach to honing in your craft is again cut from the same cloth as Kevin Durant.
I am convinced the only time Chris Hines sleeps is when Anthony Edwards plays video games. So that guy deserves some credit too, because his schedule has to be crazy.
Yes.
Grady, I'm going to ask you the last question here, and this one's a selfish one because I have quite a few friends that live in Indiana. And when you got hired here, while everyone else was mourning Dave Benz leaving, I was getting 30 texts saying Michael Grady is awesome. He did a radio show, and he used to have Willy Wonka clips on it, and like the guy is amazing. So for you, there's like 30 dudes in Indiana that are still quoting your radio show, at least.
Love it.
But I want to ask, you've been a part of that Pacers team who has never been able to win a championship. You've been a part of a Nets team that has been there a couple times in New Jersey, but with Brooklyn falling short. And as a Minnesotan, I can say that you're now on a Wolves team that is about as beleaguered as any team in the league can be. If you could give one of those teams a ring, who would you give that ring to?
He's putting you down the spot.
Yeah.
Drawing it up.
I don't dodge. I don't like the dodge questions, but I can't. That one is impossible. That is impossible.
The safe route.
That question.
There we go.
And because the love is strong across the board, and for different reasons. And I've talked about this before too. So I grew up in Indiana. I grew up a big Reggie Miller fan, and they got close so many different times. Lost to the Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals in 1998. All the battles with the Knicks before then and after then as well. And so close so many times. And it's a small market that is that has a big heart, and basketball is life in Indiana. And when I left Indiana, it wasn't an easy decision, but it also was to a certain extent, because it was allow me to take my career to another level, but still have so much friends and family and love for the team and want to see them do well. I get a treat this Saturday, the very first playoff game of the day on ESPN. I'll be calling Pacers and Bucks. I'm excited about that. So that they hold a special place in my heart, and they certainly deserve it. Brooklyn, even though Brooklyn is the borough itself is bigger than most NBA cities, and folks don't even think about that. But Brooklyn is massive. The Nets almost have a Midwest feel in terms of the underdog, because they are overshadowed by the Knicks. Everything is the Knicks. The Knicks. They have the history. They have everything there, and so it's always been little brother. Little brother. The Nets and da da da. Who cares about the Nets? It's all about the Knicks, Spike Lee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so they've been trying to get this monkey off of their back in terms of getting over that hump and out of the Knicks shadow for a very long time. And it looked like the franchise was going to get there with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, and then COVID, and then vaccinations, and then James Harden was there, and then injuries, and Kevin Durant toe on the line, and now they're back in a rebuild mode. But for me to leave home in Indianapolis and go to Brooklyn, where I didn't know anybody, and to be embraced like I was by that community, they'll always hold a special place in my heart. And then now, in a short amount of time here in Minnesota, to be embraced the way that I have, as you mentioned, with people not knowing who I was, and it was definitely Indiana and Brooklyn people who kind of helped me down during that early transition. But I knew right away, and I was good, because one of the things I learned about Minnesota is that they love hard. And I know that I'm a passionate guy when it comes to the game, the teams that I cover. And if this is a passionate fan base that loves hard, oh, we're going to get along Easy.
Mhm.
So I say now all the experiences that I had of being in an arena and watching a game 7 against the Nuggets in the conference semifinals, was the best moment of my career in terms of covering basketball. And I didn't even call the game. And so in a short amount of, yeah, again, in a short amount of time, and I've embraced the community here. I feel like I love the way the fans have embraced me. So it's a love affair that I'm excited about. And when you fly with these guys day in and day out, you're staying in the same hotels. You see them at their best. You see them at their worst, the good, the bad, everything. No, you want to see them. You want to see them reach the mountaintop. So
Mm.
that's a long way of saying I'm not going to answer that question.
Grady, if you answered it any other way, I think I would have been a little disappointed.
You did. It was a test, man. You passed the test. Before we wrap things up, we're just going to go to a 30-second ad break, and then we'll wrap it up. But if you're looking to, the playoffs are obviously coming up, especially tonight. We get the play-in games, guys. What better way to win some money?
Today's show is also brought to you by Better, the sports betting app brought to you by Jake Paul. Sign up with our code, TheDailySPN, to get a deposit match up to $200, meaning if you deposit $200, Better will match that and give you $200 in free bets. Better is currently available in 34 out of the 50 states in the U.S., including Minnesota. If you see your state in the purple, that means you are eligible to download Better and start winning money today. Me personally, I usually find myself taking Anthony Edwards over on 3-pointers made, which I'm actually taking tonight against the Thunder, along with Jalen Williams to go under 24.5 points plus assists. Again, sign up with the code TheDailySPN, all one word, to receive a $200 deposit match and start winning money today.
You on Grady? Obviously, the playoffs are coming up. They start Saturday. It's ABC. You're going to be on the call on ESPN and the other game. So another excuse for me to watch basketball because we want to hear you announce, Grady. Shout out to you for joining. We appreciate it so much, man. Thanks again for joining the show, Grady.
Always good to be on with you guys. Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. And until next time, Matt, Andrew, as always, guys, go Wolves.
Go Wolves.